Oh, recording? If everybody would mute and turn off their cameras, that would be great. And I would like to welcome Bill. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well, thank you, Janice, and the members of SIA. I know that I guess Linda is the president and Janice the upcoming president, and so am I right with that? Or
actually, I just took over
okay,
October
all right.
1st.
Well, I know that that all of you have been very important in SIA, and it was nice to meet Juliet for the first time, who's the vice president, and I'd like to thank all of you for making this meeting possible. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I feel that with us being Beach Patrol lifeguards in your town, and you guys being the civic organization, that we should have a very good relationship and be able to talk to one another and get an understanding. Tonight I'm going to kind of give you the I guess Scrooge version of the Beach Patrol, our Beach Patrol past, Beach Patrol present, and Beach Patrol future. But I look forward to the questions and answers as well. As I'm going through the presentations, I know you might have questions that come up. And so I would ask that, maybe we can go where every time I go to a new slide, I'll pause for a second and say, does anybody have any questions about that? And that way you don't forget the questions as I go through the whole presentation. I've got quite a few slides, but, I'll spend as much time as we need to go through each one. But the good thing is I've sent it to Linda. I'll send it an updated one to Linda. If I'm sorry, not Linda, Janice. If we make any adjustments, and anything else that comes up during tonight's meeting, I can also send copies as well too. I was just telling all the people that signed on early that I'm a school teacher, and I did this like for all last year. So I hope I don't mess it up, but I'm going to try and share my screen right now. And then you'll have to let me know that you see it. All right, is everybody seeing it?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
Bill.
great. All right, so a couple things, and I'm not going to read these word for word. I hate it when someone just reads their PowerPoint slides. So, but I want to just tell you about it. So I first became interested in the history of the Beach Patrol in conversations I had with Elizabeth Burgess, which I'm sure you're all aware of Elizabeth, and she was an instrumental member of your organization. And so Mrs. Burgess had told me long ago that the first lifeguard was Johnny Trainer. And I just never had any kind of historical proof of that other than Mrs. Burgess told me that. And we'll see images of a guy named Tom McCann who worked for us a little bit. He was a SIA captain, had an impact on us getting into the Chiefs. But Tom wrote a history of the SIA Beach Patrol, and he gave me a copy of it. And I said, you know what, darn it, I think, somebody should be writing a beach, history of our patrol. And so I began with the idea that I knew that there was this lifeguard, Johnny Trainer, that Mrs. Burgess had told me about. So I went to Township Hall and I started looking through all our minutes, which is very interesting, by the way. If any of the historians in your group want to, you really go through those minutes and you can learn a lot. And lo and behold, I found that Upper Township hired Johnny Trainer in 1932. And then when we sent this out, and Janice had passed it on to members of the SIA, and Ken Weaver got a hold of this, and Ken and I had talked in the past, and Ken pointed out that he had information from his aunt's diary that Johnny Trainer and other lifeguards may have worked for Strathmere prior to 1932, but they weren't funded by the township. They were funded by the Strathmere Civic Club, who was actually, raising money locally. I guess it says right there, they held card parties and dances to fund the lifeguards. And the picture there on the left-hand side is actually from Ken's collection. And Johnny Trainer, I believe, is the lifeguard on the right. And on the left is his, I believe, uncle, Al McCullough. And they don't know who the guy in the back is. So one thing is for sure is that you can say the Upper Township Beach Patrol officially began in 1932, but unofficially, it there were lifeguards in Strathmere. Of course, they're wearing Strathmere Beach Patrol there. So at that point, Upper Township didn't say, "Hey, we're paying the bills. You got to put Upper Township on it." But there's the images of our first lifeguard and some of his fellow lifeguards. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. But if anybody's any questions on that, you can feel free to fire away. So this is a image of a guy named John Walsh. In the top, you see him in his day in 1949. And on the bottom, you see an image of John Walsh when he came to visit us in 2016. And some of our current guards there. Actually, my daughter Brooke is the one all the way to the left. And for the Stone Harbor, I know he's not here, but the guy from Stone Harbor is all the way to the right. That's the guy who I rode the O Liberty Road with. That's Rod Tice. But anyway, John Walsh came to our, he actually was walking our beaches and he talked to our lifeguards, and some of our lifeguards directed him to me and said, you know, hey, this guy worked for us in 1949. And so he spent, I would guess, 4 or 5 hours up in our headquarters, just listening to me, telling me stories. And so a lot of my information really comes from the conversation that I had with John. I think some of the interesting facts that he told me was that he remembered the one stand that Strathner had was on Willard. Now, Franny DeFiore said it was on Williams. And I know that, you know, obviously Williams became our base and the box was there, the shed, but it does make sense. And maybe somebody could chime in on this. It does make sense that it might be at Willard, because I know that, you know, Harlan Whitcamp, I believe, you know, I mean, I know that Debbie lived, you know, above the post office, but I would think that maybe Harlan, who was in charge of the beach patrol, might have wanted the guards to be on his street, and he might have been on that street. I don't know if he was on that street though. John also said that it was just him and Wilson Carmona who worked, and they worked 7 days a week, or 7 days a week. Yeah. And so they were just on duty all the time. They had a boat, but they couldn't use the boat during the time that they were lifeguarding because they were lifeguarding. So, but he said they did go out and kind of have fun and train in it. I have no idea what kind of boat it was. And he didn't remember either. He did remember that it was a wooden boat though. He also remembered that he and George would, you know, go and teach kids to swim in the inlet. And it was kind of a side gig for them. Parents would bring their kids down and they would do like an hour lesson on the Corson's Inlet. And then they would just get paid in donations for teaching kids how to swim. So that was part of their daily activities. And then he also told us about the fact that his greatest day of the summer was when they had the lifeguard ball, and the entire town would go out to, I don't know if it was called the Deauville then, maybe somebody could tell me if it was the Deauville in 1949, but I think what they call it, Whalen Hotel, I think, or something like that. But they went to, you know, the venue that we call the Deauville, and had the whole town go out there, and they had, you know, dancing and, you know, drinks and dinner, and that all the money raised went to the education fund for John and George for that summer. John, I think, only guarded one summer, but George had a couple summers. And it was really a blessing that John came along when he did, because when we had our alumni gathering this year, I reached out to his son and I said, hey, you got to let your dad know we're having an alumni gathering. And I kind of knew that he was older and I didn't know. And his son unfortunately passed on the bad news that he died the year before. So we almost, you know, lost that opportunity to get all this information from John when he came down in 2016. So I threw a couple things that maybe some people have some comments on, but I'm going to go to the next slide unless people have comments or questions. Well, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but here are the people who worked in the 1940s and 50s. And I got this information from the township minutes, and they, you know, would write down every year who they hired to be lifeguards. And a couple things that I find interesting in this list is that we have a woman named Joanne Lovett, and I don't know anything about her. And if that's assuming, you know, in this day and age, you don't know whether, you know, who's a boy and who's a girl, but I assume Joanne is a female name. And so we could make the statement that she was our first female lifeguard, but I don't know if it's a kind of a smoking gun, because I did find out there were other people that were hired that didn't actually take the job. So it is possible, but she's also listed in more than 1 year. So it may be a safe bet that Joanne Lovett was our first lifeguard. And I know she's like lifeguarded in 1959, but I think she was in 57 too. And I would love to find out if anybody knows, you know, so if, you know, no one here knows of her, or if I was ever heard of her, you know, spread the word that we'd like to find out more information about her. I know that I'm very good friends with the Bonsall family, and Brian told me he was excited to find out that there was a Bonsall that lifeguarded in 1954, but he didn't know if he was related to them. So I don't know if everybody knows the Bonsals, but they lived many years in Strathmere on the bay around Prescott. And so, it's possible that they have a long time relative that might have guarded in 54. And I believe that Bob Mueller, who is in the picture up in the top, I believe he's the father. I'm pretty sure he's the father of a couple female lifeguards that guarded in the 70s and 80s with Gretchen and Caroline Mueller. But I don't know that for certain either. So, but I'd love to get more information on anybody on this list. If anybody in this group, or as we spread this information around, if people could, direct me to maybe either them if they're alive or their family, if not. All right, going to the next slide. Any questions? All right, I think I saw Joni sign in. So this is Joni's brother Franny here in 1968. He sent me the picture, and I did actually get the opportunity to exchange some emails back and forth with Franny. And he explained to me that in the 1960s that Harlan Whitcamp was around, but he was not like the day-to-day operator of the Beach Patrol. And so at that point, he definitely remembers Max Schroeder being the guy that ran day-to-day operations. And we have a list of some of the people that worked in the 1960s, and not on that list right now, but will be soon, is Joe Kiefer, because through Joan and Janice, I was given his contact, and I'm scheduled to meet with him on Sunday in Strathmere to talk about his memories. I think he worked 3 years on the Beach Patrol. So he will be added, and we'll get a lot more information. I got Jack O'Hara's online. I'm just going to put Jack on the spot, and I'll show you a picture eventually. But Jack, does he not look like Kyle Rumaker or not?
He is a spitting image. Yes, Bill.
I mean,
He's
at
spot
some
on.
point I can show you. I have a picture of Kyle Rumaker. I'd have to, shut the slideshow down. But we have a
Yes.
current lifeguard that he looks just like. It's amazing.
Yes, he does.
So the 1970s is really the pivotal decade for Upper Township Beach Patrol, and I'll show you the image, and we just recently honored several Hall of Famers, but probably the most critical lifeguard of the 1970s was Mike DeBrill, who became our first captain. I'm gonna get this out of the way. Yeah, he was 1976. He became the first captain. So he was one of our honorees at the Hall of Fame function that we had this year. And it's in the 1970s that we go from being where it is, 2 to 3 lifeguards working one stand to where we started hiring 12 to 15 guards and working multiple stands. And also in 1970s, we also hired Dick Gallagher, who, I was thinking who would be on the Mount Rushmore of Upper Township Beach Patrol. And, we've talked about one, Harlan Whitcamp would be one of the figures. And I think that Dick Gallagher would be another. Dick had a big impact on the organization of our Beach Patrol and bringing us into the modern era. So we got Captain Mike DeBrill in 1976, 1977, Dick Gallagher. And then we have really a large group of females being hired. And there is some debate actually as to who was hired first. Mary Lynn Cooper, if you know who she is, Mary Lynn Bond, she claims it was her. Dave Hadley claims it was Carolyn Mueller, and then there's also Bonnie Peel. So, so there's a little bit of debate whether it was Mary Lynn Cooper or Carolyn Mueller, and it's hard to really pinpoint but they both were two of the most earliest females hired by our Beach Patrol. And then as the 70s round out, DeBrill retired, and he, by the way, regrets it. He said he wished he could have stayed forever, but he's moved on. He's actually now got a very successful business selling dune grass, actually. And then he was replaced by a guy named Pete Griffin in 1980. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about Dick Gallagher, being that I was in town for a long time, I know that at times Dick was somewhat polarizing. I would say that, like, some people liked him and some people didn't. But I will say this, that the Beach Patrol loved Dick Gallagher, and he had a lot of impact on making us a actual Beach Patrol. A couple things that he did was he had a relationship with Sea Isle. He was the public relations director in Sea Isle. So when they gave him the job of beach inspector, he went to the Sea Isle Beach Patrol and said, "Hey, they put me in charge of a beach patrol. How should I do it?" And so some of our equipment, some of our training, some of our procedures, were taught to us by the Sea Isle Beach Patrol. The fact was that a lot of the people, when I started in the 80s, a lot of the people that worked as on the beach patrol really didn't. We understood the ocean, we understood the beach, but we didn't understand beach patrols. And so a lot of our knowledge came from Dick Gallagher through the Sea Isle City Beach Patrol. And he also realized that, hey, why is our patrol not being invited to these races that everybody's having? Sea Isle's going to races, why aren't we? So he took the initiative to have us reach out to the South Jersey Chiefs. I'll talk about what that is. And now I'm going quickly, and if we go to the question and answers, if you got questions, we can deal with that. But he approached the South Jersey Chiefs, and the president at the time was Tom McCann from Sea Isle, and he said, hey, can we get in? And so Tom said, absolutely. So Pete Griffin was the captain of the Upper Township Beach Patrol that got us into the South Jersey Chiefs. So it's in the 1980s that Upper Township first started competing in the lifeguard races. One of the significant upgrades that we had under Dick's leadership is that he was the one that had the foresight that said, when I first started in 84 and Jack in 85, like we basically just relied on our whistles. So if there was a rescue at one stand, we would blow shorts, which is that's lifeguard terminology, but the shorts is where we blow three short whistles, and that let the next stand know that we had a rescue, and it works. The problem is that on a windy day or a day where there's just a lot of background noise, sometimes those whistles they don't hear them. And so in the 1980s, it was kind of a newfound thing, like that beach patrols began using radios. Well, now, I don't know how we would operate without them. Our radios keep us in contact not just with our own lifeguards, but with the EMS personnel that comes in on medicals, with Strathmere Fire and Ocean City Fire, and whoever else gets called in. We can coordinate our rescues with our radios. But Dick's the one who thought, like, this is something we need to have. And at the time, our budget was very small, so getting radios was a big thing. And the other thing that Dick realized is that we were kind of hit and miss with what stands were guarded. And I know that like the residents of Strathmere would have a fit if like on Wednesdays there wasn't, I know there's times where we do have to close stands down, but we generally have, certain stands open all the time. And prior to Dick being in charge, it was kind of hit and miss where our lifeguards were. And so Dick said, we got to have stands at, standard locations. So he determined at that point 5 locations where there would be stands. So, our beach patrol in the town of Strathmere does owe a lot of thanks to the impact that Dick Gallagher had on the beach patrol. I'll pause for a second if there's any questions.
Yeah, Bill, this is Jack.
Yes.
Yeah. Dick was everything you said. He was a colorful guy and sometimes polarizing, but you're absolutely right. He was there when we went from no phones or radios, to some technology. And he was also a little bit of a celebrity, Bill, right? He
did he make believe ballroom?
That's it. I was just going to bring that up, that in his own right, he had this radio show that I was told was pretty popular, and it was big band music. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, he did. It was a weekly show, and the generation of big band music all knew who Dick Gallagher was very well. It was Dick Gallagher's Make Believe Ballroom. So in the 1980s, we started continuing to grow, and there were several captains. And I've been captain for a long time, but back then, we didn't have any teachers. We didn't have people that were like myself, an educator. So most of the time, the captain got to be the oldest, most responsible kid that was still in the beach patrol. And then eventually they would graduate college or find that full-time job and move on. So there were several captains in the 80s. A couple of them are Strathmere locals. Pete Griffin was the captain in 1980. Dave Schmidt is a local. He's married into the Amrod family. Eric Weeks is a local. Many people probably know him. And then Jeff Henning, Bill McCutcheon, who, by the way, the McCutcheon family were residents in Strathmere too, and Paul Matera, they were the captains that I worked under. So when I was hired under the leadership of Jeff Henning. And then I worked for Bill McCutcheon. I was lieutenant with Bill McCutcheon, and then I was a lieutenant under Paul Matera. And so this is the history that I can tell you firsthand what was happening. And one of the things that happened in the 1980s, and I remember it was kind of like the newfangled thing, was that we began getting paddle boards. Our first paddle boards came from Heritage, and it was actually shaped by by Danny Heritage. And now we have paddle boards that are kind of a standard paddleboard that we get from a company called Marine Rescue. But so we began using paddle boards, and we also, and I didn't mention it, we can go on about boats, but when I first came on the Beach Patrol, we had two boats that were from the 70s and 80s that were, but Mike DeBrill said he placed in the Margates in it, but they weighed about 500 to 600 pounds. And so the typical boat weighs about 350 pounds. So we had really heavy boats, and, we started competing, and of course the heavy boats are not good to get out through the surf. So in the 1980s, we did get two new boats. One was Frank Kruk, named after the mayor at that time. And the other one was David Farrell, who was named after our public works road director, who died unfortunately at a young age. So it's when we began the tradition of naming the boats after people. And we've kind of continued with that, in light of the fact that there are a lot of people that are donating boats now, and they would like to name them themselves. Like sometimes like they have, different names and such, but, so the Frank Kruk and David Farrell were both bought in the 1980s. It's also in the 1980s, and when Jack and I first started, we actually would arrive to work at Williams, and there'd just be one of those white boxes, like the boxes that we have on the beach now, and that's all we had to keep our equipment. Back then, I suppose we were probably supposed to keep records, but we didn't keep any because there was no office to keep records in. So eventually, that's another thing that Dick Gallagher realizes, that we need to have a place to charge radios, a place where we can fill out reports. A place where we can store our equipment in a dry and serviceable place. So we went from the white equipment box to a shed, like a kind of a garden shed at Williams, which is now where our headquarters is. So now we're going into the 90s to the present. We've got, various, these images here really range from the 90s to the present time. I think the most recent image is the one like there's of us standing at the headquarters. You can see a little evolution of our uniforms. We went from the blue t-shirts to the dark gray to the light gray, and now we're back to dark gray. So in 1991, I was hired as captain, and I remember in 1992, I was telling my lieutenant, "This is my last year. You better get ready to take it over." And I was at South Carolina, majoring in history, but I didn't think I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go into work in the government, and so I had different ambitions. And ultimately, I think by 1993, I think I was living with Jack actually in grad school, and I realized, I think I should probably start making money now and be a teacher. So I ended up staying. But there was a year where I thought maybe this would be it for me. And, but I'm glad that I chose the career path I chose. And I'm really blessed to have spent all this time at Middle Township and Upper Township. 1992, Dick Gallagher was moved as beach inspector, and they just eliminated that position. So at that point, and it's still kind of the same way, the captain had to answer to the committee person in charge. For a number of years, there was a revolving door of committeemen, and it used to be that the lowest ranking committeeman was put in charge of the beach patrol. But that all changed when Rich Palumbo was elected in 1997. Rich was the low ranking committeeman, and he was handed the beach patrol, and he was a beach guy. And I know a lot of you know him. He spends time at the beach, and he loved being in charge of the beach patrol. So as he moved from being junior committeeman to being mayor, he always maintained that position as being in charge of the beach patrol. And I know it's changed, and Kirk Corson's in charge of us now, but Kirk Corson is clearly not the junior person. So it seems like we're a hot commodity. I think that the committee likes to be in charge of us. So, I report now directly to Kirk Corson for beach patrol matters. I apologize. I noticed this and Janice didn't pick up on it, but it's not a typo. The shed was replaced by the headquarters inn. And I know it's on the dedication plate, and I forget what year it was. So, Jack, do you have any idea?
No, Bill, I remember it happening, but no, I don't know the year.
So here's what I'd say. I would guess it was about 1998. It might have been 99. Rich Palumbo was in charge. So I know he had to kind of fight for that a little bit. And I also know that my daughter was born in 99, and I can't remember her coming to visit the headquarters or the shed. So it had to be around 99 or 98, maybe 99, I would guess. But I can confirm that when I look at the dedication plate. I don't want this to be confusing here because I put several things up here. So I know some people might want to know where the stands are going to be next year, but I have old stands that don't exist anymore on this. It's kind of interesting. We had, a discussion with some of the old school guys, and some of the old school guys before I started working had different names for stands that I didn't even know. So for instance, that purple stand doesn't exist anymore. It basically would be off of Seaview. But it did exist at one point in the 70s. And I know the labels are kind of wonky, but they called it Siberia. So they would literally say, I'm going to sit Siberia. And then at one point we did have it open in the 80s and we called it Way North. And then the red stand was not open this year, but hopefully it will be open. And we didn't open it because of the nesting birds. We were asked not to open it. And then by the time we could open it, we didn't have the lifeguards to put there. But that we call Seacliff now. We eventually realized that in the day of radios and emergency management, that it's wise to call lifeguard stands the street that they're on. So that on the radio, Ocean City Fire doesn't hear we have a rescue at North. There's a rescue at Seacliff. So we eventually got rid of all the nicknames. And so Seacliff is now Seacliff. We used to call it North. The blue stand or the blue mark is Williams. But before we got rid of the nicknames, that was always called Captain Stand. And then the yellow stand has moved back and forth between Whittier and Webster for a number of reasons. And for those who are familiar with our beachscape, there is a sandbar, and that it's there every year. It's just in different locations, and sometimes Whittier or Webster might be the safer place to have the stand. And I think if I were going to project, don't quote me on this, and if I know we're recording this, but if I had to project, I think it might be located at Whittier next year, because we are going to try to increase our coverage by one stand. And so it would make more sense to be at Whittier for next year. The brown stand has moved on occasions, but it's at the CUMSA. When the jetty at Sumner was prominent, we moved it a little bit north to Vincent because they're very close to that jetty. Of course, the jetty hasn't been seen in years. So, and that's probably going to stay there at the CUMSA. And it's always been called the CUMSA or Vincent. We never had a nickname for that. Sherman this year it was at Sumner, but I believe it's going to move back to Sherman. And back in the 70s, they called Sherman, Florida. I never called it that, but so Sherman's there. It's been Prescott that we've had the stand most often, and we called it South before we got rid of the nicknames. I believe that Prescott probably is going to stay at Putnam where it stayed this year because that is where the handicap path is. So it just makes sense to have the stand where the handicap path is. In addition, it's also where I forget the name, Sydney's, I think it is. It used to be the old shack. So it's a place where a lot of people like to post up because they can go right there to get their lunch if they want. Morris, we called it Way South, but now it's called Morris. That's right off the trailer park. And then we call it 1400. It's actually, I think, literally at 1495 Commonwealth. And that is where South Shack is. So there are stand locations. Some are, current, and some are old, and the names are all reflecting on the street now. So that if we have a situation on the street and we're talking about the radio, all parties know what we're talking about. All right. Any questions on this one? All right, there's a couple events that we ran, and for a variety of reasons. One, the chicken barbecue, as you can see, we actually literally had a grill on the beach, and we grilled chicken. And I don't know if anybody was in town that remembers that, but like that was done in the 1980s. We would sell tickets and people would come up off the beach and, we would give them a plate of chicken and the guards would take turns working it. You can see that's actually myself there working the table there. We would actually have a rotation of who got to work that versus working the stands. And it was a fun event and, we made money. It was a great fundraiser, but I think that it really was logical that it was probably not smart to have hot burning coals on the beach. And when they broke it down, like, who knows what step on that. So eventually somebody realized that was probably a bad idea and said, we got to stop that. And the other thing that we held for many years, and Jack O'Hara is a big part of it, he's in that image there, was the kayak festival. He and Lieutenant Bill Stahl, who's the guy holding the paddle there. Jack was the marketer and Stahl was the race director. We would get a lot of people to come out. We'd have Six Flags out there and a lot of families would get into it. We had a partnership with a kayak company who brought their kayaks down where people could try them out and get lessons, and also, get a look at a kayak if they were interested in buying it. And then we had a big silent auction that would take place during the day. And that was, again, a lot of fun. I think a lot of people in the community enjoyed it. It was great for a while. And then we had 1 year, and we probably could be doing it now, but I don't know, again, like, if there'd be resistance, but nevertheless, like 1 year we just had a very light turnout and we just started thinking, you know what, like, let's just try and focus our efforts in other places. So that kind of, I think it was 2010, we had our last one, but, in their time, both of these were really cool community events that we got a lot of support from the community on them as well, too. All right, I have a slide here about this thing. We mentioned 1949. John Walsh said his greatest night of the year was a lifeguard ball. So the lifeguard balls were actually where there were just a couple lifeguards in the town would actually throw those couple lifeguards a party. I don't know what happened to them from the 1940s to 1990, but in 1990, that picture on the right there was the first time we had a modern lifeguard ball. We actually were able to have the firehouse and everybody got dressed up, looked nice. And, we had food and we actually had a live band there that night. And it was really a great time. So because of the way things are, and, I'm a teacher, we have underage lifeguards and, so things are changed. So our lifeguard balls have dramatically changed. And so now we go to restaurants, people get carded. The older guards who are allowed to have drinks, but basically the guards enjoy still getting dressed up. As you can see, our ladies are all dressed up. And, our center of entertainment is like some two guards are appointed to make a slideshow where they kind of review our whole season and honor the people that did well in the races. And they make fun of a few people here and there. And then, the older people go their way and the younger people go their way. And so it's kind of scaled back as what we can do, but it's still kind of a big night for the girls. I can tell you, because the guys, we're wearing ties in the first picture, but like we have trouble getting the guys to wear ties to this, but the girls kind of like look at it, especially the ones that have already graduated high school, as revisiting their prom days, where they can get that dress and really dress up for the summer. So it's kind of a big deal for them. I mentioned the South Jersey Chiefs. Again, we are an instrumental member of that organization. Now there's 15 beach patrols from Cape May Point to Brigantine that are members of it. And Upper Township did not become a member until 1980. And the Chiefs have existed since 1920s. That's when the South Jersey races first started. And there's, a lot of these races are organized by the South Jersey Chiefs, but the South Jersey Chiefs has taken on a whole new role in these modern times. We are the organization that certifies that the lifeguards of each beach patrol are meeting minimum standards. We have regular meetings to talk about and share rescue techniques, rescue equipment. So it's not just racing now. As a matter of fact, a lot of the chiefs will say, like, we try and make racing secondary to what our primary purpose is. But in the beginning of the South Jersey Chiefs, that's really what it was about, was, organizing these races, and it's evolved since then. I will say that, I did my tour as the president of the Chiefs from 2014 to 2017. So all the beach patrols would come to the Strathmere Firehouse for the beginning of the year meeting. We had the mid-year meeting in the Upper Township Senior Center because there was too many lifeguards to fit in the firehouse. And we would do our end of the year dinner at the Deauville. So I was able to bring, all the beach patrols of South Jersey to Strathmere. And we even had one of those shared training sessions in Strathmere. We actually did, every beach patrol from Brigantine to Cape May Point came to Strathmere. We ran through some drills together. We shared different equipment ideas. And then we all went to lunch at Twisties. So they got to experience Twisties. So it was kind of cool to bring, the guys from, Wildwood into Strathmere to see our little town and see how we operate compared to what they do in Wildwood. So, but again, and the other thing that I might want to point out is that the president at that time was Tom McCann. He's all the way to the left. He was the captain of SIA, and Tom McCann spent about 5 or 6 summers working for us as well too. So any questions about that? You guys are like my students. No questions.
You're doing good, Bill. Thank
Is
you.
everybody awake?
Yeah, no, Bill, I'm
All right.
enjoying it.
Okay, so let's talk about the races. Upper Township, I got to tell you, we are the second smallest beach patrol in all of South Jersey. Cape May Point is smaller than us, and we are about half the size of the next smallest beach patrol. So, for instance, the next smallest beach patrol might be, I'm trying to think, like North Wildwood. They have 60 lifeguards, so we're half their size. And we've been very competitive, and I'm going to highlight some of the things that we've done. In 2010, our Lady Ospreys, as we call them, were able to beat the entire South Jersey Beach Patrols in Ocean City. So they beat everybody in South Jersey in a race in Ocean City. And Carly Cox is a local. You may know the Cox family, I'm sure. Liz Millar was one of the inductees to the Hall of Fame. So Liz Millar is all the way to the right there. I think I can put my cursor. That's Liz Millar. Of course, where's Carly? Carly's right there. All right, Mary Ellen Curran, also a Strathmere local, right up here. And then Kara Thomas, Haley Conover, and Emily Conover. They're actually part of triplets. They have a brother too. We were lucky enough to get the two. Haley and Emily. Ray went to Ocean City, and then Abby Freitag, who also was a Strathmere local for many years. Her family, the Freitags, owned in Strathmere, but then eventually, unfortunately, decided to move to South Ocean City. But these girls were tremendous athletes. They won a lot of other races that year, but this was a critical win for us. And then on the guys' end, we have two really unique competitors that accomplished great things. But we've done a lot of things in general. But Kevin Gill won the South Jerseys in 2014 as a swim champion. And Dan Palumbo won the South Jerseys in 2013. And just to give you perspective that, the South Jerseys is like the Super Bowl of lifeguard racing. And, Sea Isles rower, their singles rower, won last year. And it was the first time in history that the Sea Isle Beach Patrol had ever had a singles rower win the South Jersey Championship. And, they're 3 times our size. It's really just elite that we have 2 South Jersey champions that came from our patrol, and it happened in back-to-back years. And in 2013, when Dan won the singles, Kevin took 3rd, and our doubles took 4th, and we actually tied Ocean City for the championship. So I might scare some of you Strathmere residents, but if we won the South Jersey Championship, we would be hosting it. And so the South Jerseys would come to Strathmere, and it was that close to us hosting the Jerseys in 2014. So it's something we strive for. Right now we've got a lot of good young rowers that they're young, and we've got 2 guys that really were good that both of them have moved on, but we've got some guys that we hired. One of them's a local, actually, James Garrow. So we're rebuilding, and it's very possible that somewhere down the road, we could win those jerseys. But in the meantime, we have won the Tri-Resorts, which is against Sea Isle and Wildwood 6 times since 2000. And again, Sea Isle's 3 times our size. Wildwood is over double our size. So it's pretty good stuff that we've been able to do. I would say this about racing too, and I think that Kurt has learned this in his year as being a committeeman. He went to the races. And when young kids go to the beach and think, what beach patrol do I want to work for? And they have options, especially if we're going to Ocean City High School, do I want to go to Ocean City? Do I want to go to Sea Isle? Or do I want to go to Upper Township? Or do I want to go to Margate? These are all the options that kids have when they're thinking, the athletes that could be lifeguards. and they will judge which patrol they want to go to by how they do in these races. So some people have questioned, why do we do this, and and the reality is it's really a big recruiting program, but it's more than that too. It's really a strong bonding. Our guards really bond and become a team, and they love like chanting. You can see how everybody's carrying Dan's boat. So it's really just a great spirit. And then the other thing is obviously is that training to be ready for a rescue is somewhat abstract. It's a reality. We all want to be good for that rescue, but in the back of their mind, they might say, well, I've only gotten 2 rescues, and but if you're training for the races, it makes you more prepared of a lifeguard. And it makes you get, skills and possibly, one or the other, but maybe all the different tools that you might use as a lifeguard. So, racing is a big part of our culture, and I think Upper Township's done quite well with it. All right, so I put these pictures together so we could see the evolution of our lifeguard stands. So in the bottom black and white picture is one of the older pictures that I have of our lifeguard stand. It was a box stand. There's that boat that probably John Walsh was talking about. So he doesn't really know what kind of boat it is, but you can see that we had box stands in the 1940s. That's Fran again up there in the top left. And again, the box stand is still there. I can't say it's the same stand as the one on the bottom. But somewhere in the 1960s to 70s, we went to what I'm sitting on. That's me, by the way, a little younger. That's a tower stand here that we had. This one was a little taller than the ones that you see over here. And that's, by the way, Jack, making him amazing Jack there a little bit. And this was the tower stands that we had in the 1980s. So you kind of see the evolution there. When I became captain, I didn't even know we ever had box stands. So I didn't know at the time, but I felt that, these tower stands that we had, we used to get umbrellas and they'd always break. Some guards would use them, some guards would not, and say, I want to get a tan. And, it was already at that time where people started talking about, hey, if you get skin cancer, you might sue their town, So I thought, like, why not give them no choice? Let's have a cover for our lifeguards. And so we went to the wood box stands that you see here. And that's a Strathmere local there that maybe that's Amy Townsend Riordan there. So these are the wood box stands that we had in the I guess we started them in 1991. So we had them, up until about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We were building these stands like every 2 years, we'd have to rebuild them. Every year we had to repaint them. And so the idea of getting these aluminum frame stands came up, where they're more expensive, but they last for at least 10 years. They get damaged a little bit, but you can fix the walls and everything. They're very repairable. And we also started putting wheels on the stands because we were having a lot of guards getting injured with back injuries. So these wood stands, a lot of times it would take 2 people to carry them. And, one of the things that would happen frequently was that the person in the back might start to lose their grip and drop the stand without telling the person in the front, and the whole stand would fall down on the person in the front. So we had injuries, not just, we did have injuries ourselves, but other beach patrols were having injuries. So a lot of patrols went to these stands. And I know there were some questions about lightning, and I'll get to that, but we have a theory on the fact that, I'll just say real quick about lightning. It doesn't matter what kind of stand you're on. It doesn't matter whether it's wood, fiberglass, metal. A lifeguard stand would be the most attractive spot for lightning to hit. And so when we get to talking about that, it's very important for us to clear our beaches at a timely manner. And that would mean also clearing the public off. So when we ask you to get off the beach, that's why we have to look out for our safety. And unfortunately, a tragedy happened this year in Central Jersey. But I'll talk about that when we're done the presentation, when we get to questions and answers. One other big event that we have in town, I hope everybody's aware of it, but if you're not, I want to make you aware of it, is we have what's called the MS Bay Race. Used to be called the MS 6 Mile Bay Race, but we kind of took the 6 mile and dropped it because now we have GPS and we realize it's probably more like a 7 mile bay race. And we have had up to 30 to 40 boats every year come and compete in it. Each of those boats pay $100 to participate. And then we have about the same number of paddlers that come, and they pay, I think it's $30 per paddler. And so all the money that we raise, we donate to MS. And I can tell you the history of it is that actually it was an idea that I came up with Steve Isle and Amy Massey, two Strathmere locals. Unfortunately, Amy's passed. But we came up with it while we were in Australia, and we said, let's do a fundraiser race. And the Deauville at that time was doing the MS Ugly Bartender Contest. So we talked to the Deauville, and they said, yeah, we'll fold this into our MS cause. And it really took off, and it's become like really a elite race. The people that win it really have to work hard to win it. And if you talk to any of the rowers, they'll tell you it's one of the hardest races they've ever done because it's long, but it's still fast. And we've gotten a lot of support from Strathmere, especially the fishing club. Jack Clements was the fishing club president when we started this, and he really got on board and got a lot of Strathmere residents to go out and be boat officials. And then through the years, we've gotten help from Dave Townsend, Herb Hollinger, Brian Riordan, Bruce Riordan, Jimmy Callahan. He's not up here too often anymore, but when he was here all the time, he loved that race. And I can tell you that he was very knowledgeable, and he would analyze the race, and whoever he was trailing, he would be giving them advice. And a couple of times it was me. So I was very thankful that Jimmy was there telling me I need to get over to the other side of the bay. But we do that every year. It's usually in the middle to end of July. Oh, and then this year, and this is really what led me to reach out to Janice and kind of brought us together and made this meeting possible, is that we were doing this Hall of Fame dinner, and I wanted the town to know, and I wanted also to get this history down so I could share it with the people at this dinner. So I started, I started the history, but this really motivated me to finish it. And so this year we were able to honor 6 people and bring them into the Hall of Fame. And I'll just point out that it's Lieutenant Mike Manning, Dan Palumbo, Liz Millar, Captain Mike DeBrill, and Kevin Gill. Now, that was at the end of the function, and Lieutenant Dean Ferguson had already left, so I had to put him in a separate picture. And Dean is from a family that has a house in Tecumseh and grew up in Strathmere, and his house is not in Strathmere, but he's about as Strathmere local as you'll get. We had 120 people come out for it, and there's all the alumni. That's not just all the guests, that's just the alumni. We did sell these t-shirts. I will tell you, if you ordered one, they're still coming. We have a supply chain problem, but some people with the larger sizes are waiting on theirs. And we also took this opportunity that night to honor Mayor Rich Palumbo. As I'm sure you're aware, he's stepping down. And, he spent, I think it was 27 years as the committeeman in charge of our beach patrol. So we raised a toast to him. And in addition, with these shirts and some donations from some alumni, we were able to offer 2 $500 scholarships that we gave out in the memory of Dick Gallagher. So 2 of our lifeguards who are freshmen in college right now got a $500 scholarship from the money that we raised. And it's something that we'd like to do every year. So as we can get this information out to Strathmere residents, if anybody wanted to donate towards that scholarship, I mean, it would be greatly appreciated. And one of the ways that we can donate too is we'll probably be doing more t-shirts as well too. So that was a really cool night. And I'll pause there again because we're going to get that. We've done the Beach Patrol past, so we'll go into Beach Patrol present. But does anybody have any comments or questions about the past?
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
So anyway, my name is Mark Berger, and I want to thank you both, Bill and Jack, for all that you do and have done for us. Here's my question. Can you tell us about the unofficial, unsanctioned rites of passages that lifeguards were exposed to, things that maybe they needed to do, like jumping off bridges or anything crazy like that?
Well, I can tell you that it's not happening here. It's not happened, are you talking about in general, or are you talking about in Strathmere, or what?
In the past, I know it doesn't happen anymore, but over the decades, I'm sure most organizations have hazing rituals or rites of passage. And any information about those kinds of things that might have gone on here in Strathmere?
Well, I'm sure there was something, rookies always got the raw end of the stick. And back in the day, we used to do rookie wrestling where we'd make the rookies get in a circle and wrestle and stuff like that, and So there was like little, like, I guess you could say things like that. Nothing like jumping off a bridge. I mean, that never happened. Like, did lifeguards jump off a bridge at some point? Probably, but it wasn't because they were forced to. It was, it wasn't because anybody made them do that. You know, to your point though, as you know, like fraternities have changed, beach patrols have changed. We all realize that, hazing can happen. So it does not happen at all. And if it happened in the past, I mean, it was things like, I'll tell you, like, there was one time, like, when I was a rookie, that I went out for a run and I came back and I went to take my drink of water and it tasted really salty, and I opened up my cooler and there was a crab in it. So, there's stuff like that that would happen, but and I also know there was a rookie school that I can remember where I came down and I saw all the rookies were wearing horseshoe crab shells on their head. So there was funny things that happened, and none of that would happen now, but I can't remember all the things, but like nothing crazy like jumping off a bridge though.
Great. I just want to make sure everyone was having fun at the time. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, so our current patrol, and this is coming from, I've gotten commitments from Commitment Corson that we're going to have 8 stands in Strathmere next year. And just to give you a little background on that, so we opened up 1,400 on a year where Seacliff could not be opened because of beach erosion. So we did it on the premise that we were going to open up an additional stand when Seacliff could be opened. And then due to budget constraints, I was told that we can't do that. We can't open up Seacliff. And I was like, well, 1,400. And some people might say, well, why do you have a stand of 1,400? And I can tell you that we had at least, I know for a fact, 3 calls, rescues from 1,400. And usually it's not at 1,400, it's south of 1,400. And so people run up to 1,400 and say, hey, someone's in trouble. So we find that stand right there is kind of like our eyes to the unprotected beach in Whale Beach. So anyway, this year I was told and we realized it was just unworkable. So I've been given commitments that we are going to have stands at Seacliff, Williams, could be Whittier or Webster, Tecumseh, could be Sherman or Sumner, Putnam, Morris, and 1,400. So that's what I would say you can bank on for next year. In order to man those stands, we need 34 lifeguards. We have 5 officers, and it's a captain and 4 lieutenants. Just to give you a breakdown of our beach patrol, we're 15 females and 24 males. That's this year, so next year it could be different. But the emergence of female lifeguards is a huge change from when I first started. There was usually like 2 or 3 females, but now it's almost 50%, and I think that's a reflection in most beach patrols now. And I think it's reflecting on the fact that like a lot of females are getting involved in the sports that lead you down the path to being lifeguarding. I can speak to, you met Brooke. Brooke's a huge surfer. She was on a surf team, and she also rode crew. And a lot of our girls are swimmers and rowers as well too. So so that's our makeup of males and females. So as far as where they're from, we have 8 residents of Strathmere, and Will Schlecter's one of them. We're glad to have him. And I know his mom's on here, but so we actually, when we had that mid-season hire, I don't know if anybody noticed that we were advertising for lifeguards in the parade. I think we hired 5 guards and 4 of them were from the town of Strathmere. So, and we love hiring guards from Strathmere, because they know the ocean, they know the town. And one of the things we'll talk about is they don't take up parking spots. So that's a cool thing. And then including those 8 residents of Strathmere, 27 of our guards are residents of Upper Township in the whole. We have 19 guards that come to work every day, plus 3 to 4 officers. So you're talking about 22 to 23 people that are coming into Strathmere every day. So when I said that we will never have less than 15 cars that need to park in town every day, it's something that I would like the town to consider, that, every day. Like I know that the talk has been like, yeah, the locals can ride their bikes or walk, and they do. But, we only have 8 locals. And so when you break that down, there's going to be 15 cars that need to find a place to park each day. And we're trying to find the most comfortable way for them to find a place to park without infringing upon the residents and what they are trying to do. I know that Williams, I don't know if we have any residents from the Williams Road, but we worked out an arrangement where we're parking along the bulkhead so that, we don't take up the spots on the street, the street of Williams altogether. But the fact is that if you want lifeguards, you gotta find a place for them to park. We have equipment at every stand. So I just broke down what's at every stand. We have a kayak, a sea cliff. Sea cliff a lot of times has to respond to things that are taking place out in the state park and the inlet. They might see things from far away. So it's kind of useful for to have a quick access to launching, but also something that, can go a distance and also can support multiple victims. The PWC is at Williams. Why is it at Williams? Well, because our headquarters is there and it just makes it so we have to trailer it in less distance. But that's why we have it located at Williams. We have a boat at Whittier or Webster. We have a paddleboard at Tecumseh, Sherman and Morris and 1400 and a boat at Putnam. As far as vehicles, we have this year we had just the Polaris and the Kubota for a period of time. The Kubota was on its last leg and we actually ordered and were approved to get a Polaris, but because of the supply chain, we never got it. And as a matter of fact, I was just told that we're supposed to get it November 9th. So it'll be a lot of good use for us at that point, but we will have it for the summer. The good news for the people who may not like those vehicles is that the Kubota was loud and I think much more smelly. The Polarises operate much quieter. They're gas driven and are less obtrusive to your day at the beach. We do conduct training at 1400 daily, except for Friday. And so what that training entails is that if I'm the officer and like I was the officer on Mondays, I may have the medic come down and talk to my group about heat emergencies. I have a prescribed thing that the medic talks to them about. So we do a little medical component. And then we'll have a physical component where I might have them do paddleboard training, boat training, or, just doing can runs with swims. We actually had some where we had can runs with fins and without swim fins. So we experiment with some of our equipment to see what's faster. And I will talk about that when I talk about boats, because I'll just say it right now. One of our drills we do is that we have a swimmer, a paddler, and a boat crew try and rescue a buoy that's set out at the same distance. Well, if it's a short distance, the swimmer wins. If it's a medium distance, the paddler wins. If it's a long distance, the boat wins. So we know how far out a victim has to be when you want to take the paddleboard, launch the boat, or just go out and swim for them, because we train with that and get to know the distances. And I will tell you that the longer distances, you will want a boat to be available. And that's one of the reasons why the boats are still a vital tool that we use. A really important thing for us to spread in Strathmere, if we want more Strathmere lifeguards, is that we do on Fridays our junior guard and mascot days. And I'm just going to tell you, and I can give you more information. I'm going to be totally communicating with Janice as much as possible. But the mascots meet from 11:30 to 1 at Williams, and the junior guards meet from 9 a.m. to 11 at 1400. So we did that so that we could break up the day and also break up the location where parents are dropping off kids, so that they're not coming to one location and that there's a traffic jam at that one location. So the very important thing for Strathmere residents to be aware of is that for the mascots, it fills up. We can only take so many mascots, and we put out the registration on April 1st. So through Strathmere Improvement Association and my communication with Janice, we want to get that information out to the Strathmere residents, in March, so they know that on April 1st, it will be up and live. And I would say by April 5th, will be filled. So you really need to emphasize that you need to get your kids signed in. And we really can't make exceptions, because I can't put 23 kids in a group with 2 lifeguards. I just can't do it. So, we have to say that's all we can take. So that's our current beach patrol in a nutshell. And again, we have the questions and answers for, anything that I didn't cover, but does anybody have any questions about that right now? All right. So let's talk about our future. One of the biggest problems we had this year, and it wasn't just us, it was all lifeguards, was that we could not find enough lifeguards. And, it seemed like every job out there can't find enough. I don't know what people are doing. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's the unemployment. But, for us with lifeguards, we're talking about 16 and 19-year-olds. They're not collecting unemployment. So we got to figure out what they're doing and why they're not trying out for the beach patrol. One of the theories is that a lot of kids in high school sports are signing up for summer camps because they see the big bucks with scholarships. And that might be true. My daughter will be the first to tell you that, you can make as much money at Chipotle as you could at Beach Patrol. So some of the potential candidates we have are realizing they can make more money bussing tables or working as a bar back. And then the other thing is that, as minimum wage goes up, lifeguards have a much more responsible job than your typical minimum wage worker. One of the things that our lifeguards get told, and we can talk to this, is that, if they're found on their phone, and a rescue takes place, their phone will get subpoenaed. And if they were on that phone, they could face criminal charges. Well, a kid in a pizza place doesn't have that kind of pressure, yet they might make the same kind of money. So there's a lot of responsibility that goes to being a lifeguard. And so we need to make sure, and there's, obviously money's part of it. I mean, like getting the right wages, and one of the things that's great about this meeting, and hopefully we have future meetings, is that we want to make this a comfortable place for them to work. We want the guards that come to Strathmere to say, I love the town of Strathmere and I love working here. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to tell the 14 and 15-year-olds at their high school, you should come to Strathmere. So one of the future goals for all of us is to make our little town a magnet for potential lifeguards. Upper Township's got to do its part by making sure we have competitive wages. But I think Strathmere can do its part by just, kind of embracing the lifeguards and making them feel comfortable coming here. And I think, again, I've already mentioned it, like one of the easy solutions would be if we could get the residents of Strathmere to be involved in the mascots and the junior guards. And then literally we can train them from 5 to 15 how to be a lifeguard. And we do that. And I can tell you, like, that's not in my presentation, but I'd say about 40% of our lifeguards right now came out of our mascot and junior guard program. So we kind of like are, recruiting our guards at the age of 5, and building them up into when they turn 16, they can just step right onto the beach and become a lifeguard. And to a certain extent, it's worked. And one of the things that would be great about getting us to make this a comfortable place is, and this meeting's part of the whole process, is increasing the familiarity between the residents and the beach patrol. I have a plan that I can talk about. I thought I put it in the slide, but where we're going to have a beachhead at every stand. So we're going to have one lifeguard. Now, they might not be there every day because they have 2 days off, but like we'll have one lifeguard who you will know, if you're a resident of Tecumseh, that, I can talk to Meredith because she's going to be the beachhead at you can even go up to Tecumseh. Hey, who's the beachhead? It's Meredith. Hi, Meredith. I'm so-and-so. And, I live here and, so, I want to let know that anything you need, blah, blah, blah. So, and then if you have concerns, you can talk to that guard, Meredith. So we're going to have a beachhead at every street that the residents can know and get to talk to and kind of work out, a relationship with them. And that was something that came about as, Janice came to our headquarters for a meeting and we were just talking and brainstorming and I even I think it came out of that meeting. One of our guards suggested it and it just seemed like it was a good idea. And then one of the things that I've talked about with Curtis Corson, he went to a lot of the lifeguard races. And he would look around and see the uniforms other patrols are working with, the equipment that they have. And that is also part of the process too, as these kids are looking around and say, what patrol do I want to go on? They'll look at who's got the coolest shirts. So we're going to be looking at and talking to our younger guards who are maybe more fashionable than I am and say like, well, how can we improve our uniforms and look better and look more comfortable and look more appealing for for people to want to come here. Our biggest focus in the future is to make sure that you have the lifeguards this town needs, and that those lifeguards are qualified and skilled lifeguards. So that's basically what we're looking to do in the future. And I'll pause for a second if there's any questions with that. Okay, so I put a slide together about what SIA can do. And I'm Bill Handley, by the way, so we've all got to meet each other. But I put down our current list of lieutenants, and God, I hope I have them all back next year. They're really good people. But I'll tell you their names so that you can kind of get you have this presentation, and when you meet them, you can say, okay, I remember that guy, Lieutenant Joe O'Neill. But it's Joe O'Neill, Andrew DeBiason, Joe LaRosa, Jim Dugan, and Amanda Eller. And so they're the people that you would see walking from stand to stand, sometimes in the Polaris. And they're the ones that, if you have a concern, you could go directly to them and speak to them on that day. And speaking of concerns, one thing that, I would like this meeting to kind of accomplish, especially in the question and answer, is that before you realize you have a concern, try and figure out what we're doing. Because there have been many times where I've had a resident of Strathmere have a concern, and when they came up and talked to me and I explained what we're doing, they're like, oh, I didn't know. So so it would be helpful if try to figure out what's going on. And if you're not sure what's going on, talk to the guards or the officer and say, hey, why are they doing this? And that might help explain what's going on. And again, to make them feel comfortable, I think one of the things that probably gets overlooked is every night, and some people do it, but not everybody, but just letting the guards know, like, hey, just wanted to let you know, thanks for being here. Like Mark did that, and he said thank you, and we appreciate when someone comes up and says, hey, thanks for what you do. And if you do have concerns, I put my email address and Kurt Corson's email address. Sometimes people would send emails, of course the mayor was in charge, but if there's a concern, we would like you to go through us first, because I am the captain. I will address it. Kurt Corson is the committeeman in charge of the beach patrol, and he would be glad to address it. And I would suggest sending it to both of us, and that way we're both on the same page. So whenever there's a concern, just send us an email. Again, please encourage families to get their kids in the mascot program and the junior guard program. And I also put the link here. This is a link to a form where you can type your own stories of your reminiscing of the beach patrol, whether you're a member or just something you remember about the beach patrol. What we'd like to do is take the unofficial history of the beach patrol that I had written, expand it, and possibly maybe at some point turn it into a book that we could use as a fundraiser for our scholarship money. So we're hoping that people can help me fill in the blanks with their own stories and contributions. So if you can't fill anything out, just pass that link on to other people so that they can. And then finally, please like us on Facebook. We're not very active right now because we're not doing much, but during the summer, our plan is to make sure we post up images of what's going on, what we do at the races, is there anything exciting going on in Strathmere? Is there any fundraising going on that you could be aware of, or the MS Bay race? And we can keep the whole town kind of informed of what the Beach Patrol is doing. Now, I know there was one thing that I just wanted to touch on before we get into the questions and answers, because someone sent me an email with concern, and that was the well, there's two things that came up in the emails from the board. One was about what are we doing about the fatalities that took place with lifeguards this past summer. And I can start with lightning first. So with lightning, as I already mentioned earlier, the one thing that is it's a fact of science is that the highest point in any location is the most likely place where lightning can strike. So at any given day on the beach, a lifeguard stand, whatever it's made out of, would be the most likely target. We have had in the past, and we're exploring, I mean, everyone's talking about this. We've had what's called a 30-30 rule. And so to explain what that rule is that number one, if we see a bolt of lightning across the ocean, we clear the beach immediately. Doesn't matter how close that lightning is. If it's over the ocean, then we are clearing the beach immediately. And if we see lightning to the west side of us, or, from the north or south direction. All right, our guards are instructed to observe the lightning and then begin counting. And if they count and hear the thunder within 30 seconds, that would mean that the storm, based on the science, is 6 miles away. We also, by the way, have apps that are lightning detectors, but, again, the apps have their flaws too. But we do have we all have apps in our smartphones that track lightning. So, but the 30-30 rule is what we apply. Now, the reason why we're questioning it is because the incident that took place in central Jersey, there's indications that storm might have been up to 10 miles away, which would mean that like the 30-30 rule might not be applicable. But every beach patrol in South Jersey, going back to the South Jersey Chiefs, we share that information. We're analyzing it. So next year we could have, even though it might not be, we might have to be like, well, if you count within 20 seconds, then, or I'm sorry, like 40 seconds, then we have to clear the beaches. When we go to clear the beaches, our guards are trained, and this comes from our JIF, which is our Joint Insurance Fund. Our guards are trained to verbally tell people that they must vacate the beach. They need to verbally tell, and with good reason, feel like they've told everybody that they need to leave the beach and then get themselves off the beach, regardless of whether people leave the beach themselves or not. At that point, if the person is foolish enough to be on the beach still, it's their problem. And we can, in good conscience, say we told them to get off the beach. But the reason why that came about is that about 10 years ago, maybe even longer, a Cape May lifeguard was struck by lightning trying to clear his beaches. And, it was clear that everyone should have been off the beach, but that Cape May lifeguard felt obligated and was told that you can't go and seek cover until everybody's off the beach. So our insurance company said, no, you guys got to just tell them to leave the beach, and then it's up to them to leave the beach. But how the residents can help us is, you're hearing this right now. There are days, I can tell you right now, where it's a beautiful day and everybody knows that storm's probably going to miss us, but we might be obligated to clear the beach, and people will question us and say, are you crazy? I'm not leaving. I have to get back to my car, blah, blah. We got to do it. And I think that if we can get help and support by the residents to say, like, you know what, they got to do it and we should leave too. Because it's what we have to do for all our safety. The bottom line is that there is evidence actually that lightning can strike up to 20 miles away, but there's sharks in the ocean. It doesn't mean we have to leave the ocean every time one might be within 5 miles of us. So you can't get over paranoid. But that's that. I mean, the one policy change I could see is that we might clear the beaches when a storm is a little further away than what they've been because of that incident. Any questions with a lightning policy? Wow, I really do feel like I'm back at school.
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
do. Sorry, Bill. It's Linda
Yeah.
Bateman.
Yes.
I'm not on the beach as much as I was when my kids were younger, but many times the guards would come up to us and say, just want you to know there's a storm out there. You may want to pack up because it looks like we're going to be, and we kind of got a heads up. And I don't know if you still do that, but we, especially with kids, you have all kinds of stuff. And I always appreciate that warning. Even if it blew past, that was fine. But at least we knew it was coming, and they were usually right.
We still do that. It's like usually like when we know it's not close yet, but it's coming. We know it's coming. Then and we know, like, and this too, like the people bring some pretty big apparatuses down to the beach. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people trying to take their big tents down, and I was like, something, that tent, you can get another one. You can't get another, kid or your life, So we do try and do that. We try to be proactive. We would still do that. I mean, I can't say we always do that because, sometimes they come up on us pretty quick.
Right.
But if we know it's coming, and, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that we have radio contact with SIA and Ocean City. So depending on where the storm is, like sometimes I'll hear SIA clearing their beaches. So I know, hey, we're going to be clearing our beaches in 5 minutes, So we would do that. It was a very unfortunate thing. There's a lot of talk about the metal stands. The fact is that whether your stand is metal, wood, or fiberglass, or whatever it is, if you're still sitting on that stand and get struck by lightning, you did something wrong. So our policy is that we're not going to put our guards in a situation where they will get struck on that stand, because they're going to be off that stand and cleared the beaches long before that would be a problem. I understand that issue up in I think it was I want to say it wasn't Seaside Park, but Berkeley Township, I think. it was what they called Blue Thunder, and it might be a once in a lifetime freak accident. So they say there was no sign whatsoever that there was a storm coming, and that the lightning came out of nowhere. So as far as the boats go, I've already addressed the fact that in a long distance rescue, there is no equipment that you would rather have coming out to save you than a boat. Now, granted, there's not many long distance rescues anymore. We're a pretty proactive beach patrol, and a lot of times we will prevent someone from getting in trouble before they get into that long distance. Where it can happen, and we do have a lot of them, is when people are swimming at a sandbar where the lifeguard stand is kind of far away from that sandbar to a gully, or the beach gully sandbar. So now that there's more distance, so if a lifeguard had to swim out there to get to those victims, they'd have to surf dash through the gully, surf dash across the sandbar, and then get to the victim. The boat would definitely be useful in that situation. In addition, if there was multiple victims, and we haven't, knock on Formica, but we haven't had like years ago, Jack remembers that we had a situation where a whole beach got taken out, where we had 10, 15 people in one rip get pulled out. And so in those situations, you'd want a boat going out there because it becomes a platform where you can, one guard can jump in, you can get people and have them hang on the boat. You can get all 10 people in on the boat. So the boats are still useful, right? Some people will say they're not useful. I would argue that I have a lot of evidence that they are. And if you're going to use it, you want to know how to use it. You want to know, how to row it. Now, we will never in Upper Township force anyone to row in rough conditions. Some people do, and some people will say that, I need to be able to be prepared to, rescue in these kinds of conditions. But one thing I've learned is that there are conditions, that no one should be rowing it. And I believe in that situation in Cape May, that was that situation. I don't want to put Cape May under the bus, but I just think that he was 16 years old. It was a rough day, and he probably shouldn't have been out there that day. That being said, the boats have been used for over 100 years, and that's the first fatality. They can flip and they can be dangerous, but more times than not, I've flipped them in many times. You usually flip with enough water below you that it's not going to hit you and kill you. And then the reason why that happened in Cape May is because of their bathymetry of the beach. They have a very steep drop off. And so from what I gather, he rode that wave and came onto dry beach basically. And when the boat rolled, there was no place for his body to go when it rolled on him. So there's a lot of unique situations with that. But I think that the number one thing that all of us will learn from that is that, there are days where a guard will sometimes be their own worst enemy and say, I'd like to try and row in that. And as an administrator, I would say, no, you're not rowing in that. So that's one thing that we'll learn from all that. But in the end, I think that, there's going to be some people that are going to say the boats don't have a use. Not only do they have a use for what I said in long distance rescues, but there's two other things that boats are useful for. Number one, for most of our training, we have to put out flags. Okay. So if we're going to do a swim, we have to have a flag to swim to. If they're going to do a paddleboard, they're going to have to paddle to a flag. We have to put the flags out. And so the boats are useful for getting a flag out. We can bring them out with a PWC, but then you got a concrete brick bouncing around a PWC. It's a pretty expensive piece of equipment that we don't want, concrete, sitting on. We'd rather put it gently down the boat. And then the other thing about the boats that I know personally, because I'm a rower and I'm not a surfer, but my daughter's a surfer. I don't know if there's anybody that's a surfer here, but when you are out in the ocean in a boat or on a surfboard, you really get in tune with the ocean and learn how to be confident and aware of what's going on around you. And so even if it's not in a boat, if I had to make a rough water rescue as a lifeguard, I would feel more comfortable doing it because I've had experiences in the boat where I see a wave breaking and I know I got to row through this right now. I cannot sit here. I got to get through it. And I've had that experience and I've had the confidence of success. And so whether it be a boat or a paddleboard, the equipment that we use give us confidence to do what we got to do in the ocean when that time comes. And the last thing I'll say about all this is that, one thing that a lot of people don't think about is that when rescues happen, it's usually not in ideal conditions. Rescues happen when the surf is rough, and most people really wouldn't want to be going into water, and that's when we sometimes have to go in. So, but that's my take on the boats and the paddle or the lightning. And at this point, I've talked a lot. Well, I'll open up for questions and answers now because I feel like I've been talking too much.
Remember, everybody, when you want to ask a question, to unmute yourself.
And you know what? If you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing, and that
That'd
way I
be-
can see everybody.
Then we can all, right, come back in. Anybody have any questions?
Wow.
There has to be questions.
Oh, but yeah, okay. Okay, Mark.
I just want to say thank you, Bill. This is Juliet. Wonderful to hear, and I love the photos and the presentation you put together. So thank you for sharing that, and look forward to partnering with you this summer.
Thanks again, Juliet. It was great to meet you too.
You likewise.
Bill, I was just curious about how do you train your rookies? What kind of training do they have before they're released to watch over us and our friends and families?
Okay, so they get trained for 40 hours. So that's 5 days of work. And in addition to that, we add to that they are trained in CPR and first aid. So that's not included in their 40 hours of training. So, and there's a lot to learn, and they don't come out of rookie school being experts. I can tell you that right now, but they do learn a lot. And so one of the things that we do is we train them in actually reading the ocean. And a lot of people don't know exactly how to identify a rip. What are the features that would be around, and sandbars and jetties and stuff like that. Like that would be a likely place where a rip would occur. So it's kind of knowledge-based things like that. Plus, there's physical training. They're trained in using the equipment, the paddle boards, the boats. There's a system that they use when making a rescue. When we make a rescue and you see us run out with rescue cans, there's a whole system that the guards need to learn. Like the first guard provides the victim with a can and secures them with the can. The second guard comes up, and the first guard has to tell them which side the rope's on, and they do an exchange so that the second guard becomes like the person holding the can, and the first guard comes out and starts swimming in. So we train them in all those techniques. We also train them in dealing with spinal injuries in the water and on the beach. We train them in how to be safe and be safe for themselves, and making sure not to get injured. How to we talk to them about how to carry the stands, how to lift the boats, how to get the jet ski on and off the trailer. So as I list all this stuff, and I'm not listing everything, there's probably more that they need to learn than we can do in 40 hours. So then what happens now is that rookie will never sit alone. The rookies, their first year, will always sit with a veteran guard. And in my opinion, a second year guard is getting to the point where you can kind of say they know what they're doing, but really, in my opinion, it takes 3 years for a guard really to know everything they need to know to be a lifeguard. And I don't know if that scares you, but that's the reality, is that that it takes them 3 years. That's why we want to maintain our guards. We want them, and the average career span of a lifeguard is about 6 years. So after 6 years, they're graduated school and moving on to another job.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, can I add a little bit?
Sure.
Bill and I didn't talk one bit before this evening, so this is all for me. If everyone's sitting on the beach and watching, there's a lot. I mean, Bill just touched on a little bit of it that goes on behind the scenes. And Mark, about the hazing, you mentioned about the hazing. I can tell you, in all the years I've been a lifeguard, there has never been any kind of hazing that would be questionable at all. Silly things like Bill mentioned, I saw happen 100 times, but nothing that would make it to the news one bit. I can guarantee it. I've never seen it. It's the honest truth. Another thing, Bill was talking about the moving of the stands. I've heard people ask about it back and forth. And if you saw from that map, the beach literally changes every week, month, summer to summer. So the stands really do have to reflect what is the safest beach for a group of people to swim off of. And sometimes that isn't as the same as last year, last summer. So he's got to move it a blocker or so. And then Bill, as far as hiring the new guards, it's a constant rotation. You're always bringing up a new class of guards, and they're all young. And I got to say, to Bill's credit, a lot of these kids show up 16 years old. They have never had a job in their life. And Bill teaches them a work ethic and also the responsibility. I mean, the lifeguarding, is not, it's not all suntan and showing off. It is a serious role. And, Bill instills that. Hopefully they catch on to that. But the responsibility is a big thing for a 16-year-old, if you can imagine that. But a work ethic, showing up at a certain time every day and not having your mom call in and make excuses for you. And, it happens. And Bill comes down hard on them. They are used to, getting fed from a spoon, and Bill doesn't do that. And so I have seen it many, many times where kids have shown up 16 years old, little bratty, and after a couple of years, they've matured. So I've watched that many times, Bill. I'm sure you have also.
Yeah.
We've both seen it, but I've watched these kids grow up in front of my eyes, starting off as a little smart aleck, really not paying attention all the time, and that work ethic. I can tell you, Bill teaches, and I've seen it so many times, and it's really it's a good experience. It's a good thing to see. Watching these kids grow up in front of you and being legitimate, responsible lifeguards, and it is a serious role, and they take on that role at a very young age. So, hats off to Bill.
Thanks, Jack.
You got it.
Anyone else have any questions?
There's
No?
one thing I can address actually, and Janice, someone in the board brought it up, and I'm aware of it, but there was a water rescue on October 2nd in Strathmere. And to clarify any misinformation, that Upper Township Beach Patrol was not involved in that in any capacity. We were not there. Our equipment was not there. Most of our equipment is taken offshore after our last shift. So we weren't there. And I don't know the details, so I don't want to speak to the details of what happened. And, I will tell you this, that it's a passion of mine, and I teach a class in my school. Believe it or not, I'm a socialist teacher, but I have a water safety class that kids can take as an elective. And I am trying to get the information out to people that you really are putting your life at risk when you swim at unprotected beaches. And there is nothing that any town can do that when you go swimming at 9 p.m. during the season, or if you go swimming in October, or if you swim in March, no town can prepare for that and have a plan of action. The one thing I would say is that people should not be swimming unless, and this is a big unless, because I hate to even say it, unless you are an expert swimmer. And I would even tell you that our guards pass swimming tests, they have to swim a 500-meter pool swim in under 10 minutes. But I would be willing to argue that there are ocean conditions that would be difficult for anyone, and even them. So if you don't understand, I wasn't there that day. All I know is my daughter was surfing that day, actually. So she wasn't aware of the scene, the incident, but she said, "Dad, it was rough." If you're not smart enough to know that ocean's rough, then you shouldn't be swimming. And, so one of the things I'm passionate about is that we need to get the information out that people should not be swimming at unprotected beaches at unprotected times, unless they are an expert swimmer. And even then, it might be risky. And I shared with Janice the video that we made a few years ago with Strathmere Fire to try and hammer that home. We had Actually, it was my daughter and her boyfriend. And by the way, I didn't know it was her boyfriend at that time. Like he did not admit that he was her boyfriend, but we had him pretend to be boyfriend, girlfriend. And, he was out swimming and then all of a sudden she drowns and we had like Strathmere Fire comes and rescues her. And we have statistics of how many drownings happen every year. Unfortunately, if you look at the drownings in all of South Jersey, it almost always, I mean, literally like 99% of the time is at unprotected beaches at unprotected times. So, I know that there was a water rescue but I will, to follow up on that, and, we know that there are times that we're there and even though it might be a minor rescue, we know that if we weren't there, that person would have died. And I can assure you that if you didn't have lifeguards in Strathmere, that you would have at least 3 to 4 fatalities probably a year that, would happen because there aren't lifeguards. So, just it's really important that people, understand that you should swim in front of lifeguards.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't know if you can answer this, but this year we spent a lot of time on the beach with the that were roped off with our piping plovers. And I know that it was a cost savings measure to put the guards closing time at 5. Are there any chances that this will be put back to the 6 p.m. finish time? Because if you think about it, we lost an hour a day of a time when dogs were not on the beach. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how we can get that across to people. The guards are very helpful when we do see dogs on the beach. They do come and ask the people to take their dogs off. But when you leave at 5 or when they leave at 5, that gives the dog walkers come out at 5:01.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if you know this, but like we were 5 o'clock Monday through Thursday and 5:30 on Friday through Sunday. And some of the dog walkers couldn't figure that out. And sometimes they'd come popping over the dunes at 5 o'clock and not realize that we're still there. It's a difficult question. Again, I wish Committeeman Corson was here because that becomes down to the decision that he would have to make. And I will tell you that it's not really a cost savings reason why we changed our times. It was consistency. And that's because that's the exact same times that Sea Isle and Ocean City covered their beaches. So the thought was they wanted to be consistent with what our neighboring towns are doing. Now, whether it was cost savings or not, that'd be a question you'd have to ask Committeeman Corson, but that was what I was told, was that they wanted to be consistent with what Sea Isle and Ocean City are doing. And yes, we do tell people to remove their dogs when we're there. But once we're off the beach, that's a question I can't deal with. Once we're gone, I can't say there's anything I can do about enforcing no dogs on the beach.
And I think that's where some of the education and helping people understand what the presence of the dogs isn't just a nuisance kind of a thing, but they really do affect the endangered species. And that's part of the education, the piping plover project that we, had in Strathmere, thanks to Deb Revel and a few others, was successful at. So we, again, partner with you.
Yeah, and we do what we can while we're there. Like I know that our guards are fully aware that and I'll tell you another thing that is kind of a new trend is that we now are dealing with that fact that we'll go up to people with dogs on the beach and they'll say it's a service dog, and we are limited to what we can say. All we can ask is like, what's he trained to do? And we aren't even allowed to ask for verification that they are a service dog. On occasions, I've ran into where it's clearly not a service dog. They're not on a leash, they're not trained. And so I've kind of addressed that, but I'm not even sure what my legal rights are with that as well too. But people are wise to the idea that they could say that it's a service dog. And then at that point, there's nothing more that we can do.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing
It's
battle.
difficult. Yeah. But we did really appreciate the lifeguards, addressing any dogs on the beach when they were there. They did a great job this year.
And I think that, like, you know, for the most part, most people know that, like, don't bring your dogs on the beach while the guards on the beach, but they also know exactly when we get off duty.
Yeah.
Sometimes. You know, that 5:30 thing, that 5:30 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we throw them for a loop every now and then.
All right, are there any more questions for Bill? I do have to say, I was really thrilled when he reached out to me. He came over to my house and we had a nice talk about, you know, some of the ways that, you know, we could help each other out. And also was able to sit in on one of the lifeguards. Actually, it was a Labor Day weekend, their last meeting, and, you know, really got to hear, you know, how they felt about lifeguarding and some of the challenges that they had. And you know, I think that those two meetings were just really eye-opening for me. So thank you, Bill, for doing that. And he did volunteer to, you know, present to us. And it was an absolutely fascinating, as I said at the very beginning, history of the Upper Township Beach Patrol, getting an understanding of, you know, the challenges that you face and how, you know, going forward, we can work together and support each other. And I look forward to that partnership.
Well, thank you, Janice. And I just want to say that, you know, again, like, the history is very important to me. I'm a history major. So anything that this group here, or as this information spreads out, that we can do to help, you know, build that history, I'd be very much appreciative. And I also just want to say, because I didn't say this, that, you know, I've worked in Strathmere for 38 years, for I think about 7 or 8 years. And I'm going to meet Joe Kiefer at that little house next to Frank's. I lived at that house for about 7 or 8 years. And I spent a lot of time on the island. I know, and I guess maybe Joni, is Joni still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you know, I spent a lot of time with Joni back in the day, partying on the stairs without a deck. Remember that? Like, you know, we won't go into more details about that, but I've spent a lot of time in Strathmere. I love this town. I mean, I love everything about it. And so I just want you to know that, you know, I am a true believer in the uniqueness and greatness of Strathmere. So anything I can do to make it better, I'm with you on it.
That's great. I also want to say, we talked about, you know, the project that we have, our Strathmere Stories as told by the people who've lived it. And you realized, you know, we have a lot of information to help you out with your unofficial history of Strathmere, and I'm really appreciative of all the folks that are doing that. And before we go, I will mention that we will have links to make sure that the unofficial history that was referenced earlier will be accessible via the newsletter and on our website. I'll also post the presentation, the rescue video, and so make sure that everybody has, you know, all the information. I also will post the recording. So for those who unfortunately missed this tremendous presentation, they'll have the opportunity to see it. Okay. With that, thanks everybody for joining, and thank you very much, Bill. It was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Lovely.
Thanks.
Thank
All right.
you.
Have a great night. Thanks again.
Thank you,
Bye now.
Janice. Thank you, Janice.
Thanks.